Aegisth from Richard Strauss's Elektra. It frustrates me and drives me up a freaking wall when this darn character is cast to an aging lyric tenor or even a character tenor. Because much like the case of Herodes, I've always preferred Aegisth to be sung by an actual Heldentenor, a voice that could soar over an orchestra while presenting a lot of virility, strength, steel, metal, and a whole lot of beefiness to the voice rather than just some smarmy character tenor. And my reason stems from the fact that Aegisth is a king first and foremost, much like his more biblical counterpart, Herodes. Aegisth is first and foremost a king. And even though he's not a great king, he's a king nonetheless. So, what do you think of kings? They're supposed to sound powerful, they're supposed to sound virile, they're supposed to sound beefier and absolutely manly. And even though Aegisth ends up being killed by Orest and his tutor, he still needs to have that regality about him because he is still Clytemnestra's paramour, let alone lover. And he is also as much of a culprit in doing Agamemnon in. If Clytemnestra is for a contralto, at least in my opinion, shouldn't Aegisth be just as formidable as she is, let alone just as complex as she is, even though his part is extremely thankless as hell? I'd argue yes, because that is where the steel and the strength of a Heldentenor comes into play. Besides, some of my favorite Aegisths of all time are the likes of Hans Beira, who is my number one favorite in this role, and following suit is James King. And I'd even argue that James King really takes over Hans Beira as my personal favorite Aegisth of all time because he was the complete package. He had strength, he had virility, and he had incision that made Aegisth, let alone his interpretation of Aegisth, thoroughly amazing. And it's no wonder why he had been singing this role for what almost felt like 20 to 30 years. It says a lot that James King is the gold standard for Aegisth, and I also prefer Aegisth to be sung by a veritable Heldentenor and not a character tenor.